David Haye, how good was he really? I think he's an interesting one. He's a really interesting one. He might have been a victim of something that some boxers are, which is people didn't really want to fight him. I think at cruiserweight level, he was undefeated, and I think he was unbeatable. Really, honestly, I think he was a top cruiserweight, one of the best cruiserweights ever. You know, in my opinion, he had speed. He was slick. He had a lot of power. I mean, he took that power up to heavyweight, and he was just at cruiserweight level. I think David Haye was world class. Most of the big fights are at heavyweight. You know, if you want that big payday, it seems that there's no better place in the heavyweight division. So he went up and he fought that Valuev, didn't he? And that Valuev had been a champion for quite a while. A lot of defences, just so big. You know, it really was pitched as David and Goliath, and it was David and Goliath. Really, it's just a huge monster of a man, just absolutely gigantic. Haye allegedly broke his hand on a big punch that he landed on the guy's face. I mean, there were gloves on. You know, break your hand. Just shows you how formidable that guy's chin was. And he did that. He just wobbled him, didn't he? Wobbled Valuev and made him do a bit of a silly dance, as I remember them calling it. And he rightly so became the WBA heavyweight champion. So that shows you that he got a lot of pedigree. 2-weight world champion. He did a defence against John Ruiz. He was a good fighter, good boxer. Maybe it was towards the end of Ruiz's career. I think, well, it was Ruiz's last fight. He knocked out Ruiz. So that's what I mean about David Haye at cruiserweight. You know how good he was because he had that speed and he had the power that was knocking out heavyweights. Then he went on to fight Audley Harrison, who, I mean, whatever, you know, no offence Audley, but your career just, for whatever reason, never really took off, and I don't think that's really ever going to be a win that's going to sit out any boxer as being top level, or I'll be Audley Harrison. Yeah, no offence to you. Then he went on to fight Vladimir Klitschko, and he lost. And hey, I think Klitschko was being trained by Emmanuel Stewart, wasn't he, at the time? He just completely couldn't. He just completely had David Haye's number. Just David couldn't work inside those long arms. Klitschko puts out, and he just jabbed him, and David Haye showed a lot of resilience, a lot of grit and determination to stick in there, that durability. He had that durability at heavyweight. You know, he could take a punch, David, as well. But yeah, ultimately lost to a better man, and I don't think he ever really went looking for that fight again. I'm not sure if he would have got it if he had wanted it. I don't think there was any call for it in the public. It wasn't a particularly close fight. He just got outclassed on the day by a bigger man. That's it. You know, David Haye wasn't a natural heavyweight. He was a cruiserweight who was so skillful he could go up to heavyweight. Yeah, some wins against Chisora. That was a good knockout as well. Then just inactive, really. I think he had a lot of injuries. He's always ripped about his toe. I've had a toe injury before, and I can tell you this: if you have injured your toe, genuinely, it's debilitating. Honestly, you can't do anything. If you've injured your big toe, you try and go for a run. You try and walk with any real purpose or anything. It's absolutely debilitating. So, okay, yeah, it's funny because it's a toe. Like, oh, I've hurt my toe and I'm a boxer, but it really does. From someone who's had a toe injury, I've had something called a surf toe. So it's what you damage the ligaments. It's an absolute nightmare, honestly, and it can just keep going as well. It really is a nightmare when you damage your toe. So, all right, yeah, it's funny. I do get it, but it's not for me. It's not for me really any reason to say that he was ducking anyone. I think if he has genuinely hurt his toe, he genuinely has hurt his toe. I don't think the Fury fight, I really don't think David Haye would have ducked him, but I think as time drew on, I think he really realised what he'd have been coming up against. It didn't work out for him against Klitschko, big man. I'm not sure it would have worked out against Fury. I just think Fury would have been a little bit... Fury would have been clever enough to play to his strengths. David Haye's got a lot of great boxing IQ, but against someone who's gonna just be on the outside boxing you with a jab, which I think Tyson would, and putting his weight on David, I think he would have struggled. And yeah, so David Haye's career, I think it could have been fuller. I think there could have been more fights, more big fights, and I think he would have mopped up. He could have stayed at cruiserweight, and we would have been talking about, I think, one of the greatest boxers, British boxers of all time. A lot of people would probably be saying, "Oh yeah, David Haye," if he'd stayed at cruiserweight. I think it would have been obvious. I think he was just at that. He was just so good at that weight. A heavyweight. He obviously showed his skill. Then come the Tony Bellew fights, which were fought at heavyweight. It's a shame, in my opinion, and I'll say why. David Haye was inactive and decided to come back into boxing. I think he'd had a little bit of time out. Let me just double check that. So he'd had about nearly 4 years out of the ring. He comes back and fights a couple of nobodies. Yeah, they're not even real fights. 1 round knockouts, 2 round knockouts. Not real fights. And then he comes back and fights Tony Bellew, a boxer of real pedigree. Really good cruiserweight. And he's going to fight David Haye now. Now, Tony Bellew is someone whose career's he's just got better and better. David Haye's been active for a long time. 1 year is a long time out of the ring. 2 years is a century out of the ring. 4 years is madness. You've got to wonder whether there were things that was keeping him out of the ring. There was a lot of talk about injuries he had with his shoulder. Apparently, some doctor told him he should never fight again. And now all of a sudden, he's telling people that, "Oh no, I'm fit and I can do it." Maybe he was just coming for a payday. I don't know. Maybe he genuinely believed he could do it. One thing that's certain is that he was winning the first fight. There's no doubt about that, and he would have gone on to win it as well. He was absolutely phenomenal, I thought. For someone who'd been out of the ring for so long, he was ducking, diving, just really great. He looked quite snappy, and the argument is that Bellew would have always come into his own later on in the fight. But for me, Bellew lost the first 5 rounds, so he'd have had to win the rest of the rounds, wouldn't he? In the 6th round, Tony Bellew lands as many punches, pretty much, as he landed in the whole fight, pretty much, because David Haye's Achilles goes. Did David Haye know that his Achilles would go? I don't know. Was that the reason he was out of the ring for so long? Who knows? But it goes, and then it's a different fight. And if you look at the jabs landed in that fight, Haye landed more jabs. Look at power punches. It's Tony Bellew, and that just shows that he was just... Tony Bellew wasn't even having to really work behind his jab. He was just being able to unload on David Haye, who really showed what a warrior he was staying in that ring. I mean, can you imagine your Achilles going? That's a painful injury, really painful one. And for me, that shows what a great champion David Haye was. It took a lot of punches, and Tony Bellew can he'd finished a few good opponents. So Tony Bellew had power. He did really well against Usyk as well. Second fight, Tony Bellew. In some ways, I wish he hadn't taken it. I think behind closed doors there was some sort of there was obviously the public demand for a rematch because of the way David Haye had lost the first fight. But what was clear if you watch that second fight is that David was for the first time in his career, he was sort of like fighting on the front foot. He was putting all his pressure on the front foot. He wasn't fighting really slick off the back. He was sort of leaning on the front foot in a way he'd never fought before. So now you're at an elite level, fighting an elite level boxer, a completely new way. You know, the sort of in what would be the last fight of your career, the latter stages of your career. There was only really going to be one winner. David, and I think he put a lot of energy into the first couple of rounds. I think he nicked those. And then Tony Bellew just comes through. Tony Bellew's no mug. You know, you can't... It's not like you can fight him anyway and win. I think David Haye fighting him the way... You know, injury-free, fighting him the way that he'd choose to fight him would win. But having to fight a select way, he just had no chance, and he lost. And it was a shame, really, to see David Haye's career end like that. But then again, it was a big payday, and I'm not sure going into that how confident David Haye would have been that he could win, because he knows what his injuries are. He knows how he's had to change his style, and that's that. So, in conclusion, I think David Haye is someone who history might not remember as being as great as he really was, because he was avoided a lot, had to fight at a weight that wasn't really his weight, and his career ended in a manner due to his injuries, really, rather than necessarily being outclassed. That's just my opinion. I'd like to know what you think, so let me know in the comments, and yeah,